Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, April 7th, 2016. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5, joined, as always, on Thursdays by the Director of 24/7 Sports Recruiting Efforts, Steve Wiltfong, no doubt coming to us from a gray Midwestern outpost. What's up?
Good morning, Daniel. Trying to get a new roof. Keeps raining on me. They got to keep pushing it back a day. Mother Nature getting in the way of my plans. No one's getting in the way of Ohio State's recruiting plans as they're running away with the number one recruiting class in the country.
No doubt, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Certainly rain on a day you're trying to repair your roof, definitely not fun, but it is the Midwest, so everything's going to be gray until it feels like forever. But we digress. And yes, today we were going to talk about just how good is Ohio State's recruiting efforts going in the class of 2017. Everybody has access to the site. You can click on the recruiting rankings. As you're listening to this, might be helpful to follow along. As of right now, and they have been for a while, Ohio State has 13 commitments, which is out of the top 15, the second most, only to Miami, who's in the third spot. They've got the highest average per recruit. If I look here, even higher than Alabama. It doesn't look like now, and having looked at these rankings for the last 2 or 3 years, no one's really ever had a lead of this sort. Oklahoma's number 2 and is, well closer to 3 than 1. Does anybody even really have a shot here to knock Ohio State out of the number 1 spot? I realize it's early. They've got a massive lead.
Yeah, well, you look at Ohio State's class, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys ranked in the top 100 for the 24/7 Sports Composite, and that doesn't even include the guy who may honestly be the best player in the class when it's all said and done, and Brendan White, who checks in as the number 10 safety for the 24/7 Sports Composite. We're much higher on Brendan at 24/7 Sports. We have him as the number 2 safety, number 2 player in Ohio. He could obviously grow into a linebacker too, so I think he can be special. So yeah, right now Ohio State has a clear hold on the number 1 class in the country, and then you look at the targets, blue chippers scattered all over the place. That has Ohio State in the top 2 or 3. So they have a good chance to go coast to coast. Could they be caught? There's a couple teams. You look at Alabama. You look at USC. Those are 2 schools that I think are going to obviously make a run, USC being one I think, Alabama being obvious. And then Florida State just depends on how big their class can get. I don't think that they're going to take a full boat. So I think they'll take closer to 20, but less than 20. So it'll be a star-studded class for Florida State. I don't think they're going to have enough manpower. The Buckeyes, it's just another special group being lined up, and it just how it really comes down to just this staff being able to get ahead with so many great players, and it's not easy to do that, but it's a great team effort, and we talk about it every Thursday, but just the way these coaches are able to target who the big-time guys are early, a lot of times before the rankings are even formulated into a sensible thing. Ohio State has their board put together. They know who they're targeting. They know Jeffrey Okudah is a big-time guy early in the process. They know they know Josh Myers is a big-time guy early in the process. Jake Moretti, we've talked about before. He may be the best offensive lineman in the class. I know we have him ranked he checks in at number 60 overall per the composite, and Josh Myers checks in at 3. But there's some people inside the Woody, I guarantee that would say Moretti's the guy in this class on the offensive line. Obviously, they love them both. I'm just saying, such a talented class, and they're getting their top guys, and they're going to get several more of their top guys. Alabama, USC, probably the biggest threats, and the one to watch really is does Shaun Wade stick? Because he checks in at number 12 right now, and he's obviously looking around and committed to Ohio State, but Florida State and Alabama among the programs looking to flip them.
Yeah, I don't see Shaun Wade sticking. But there's a trend developing here, a macro trend. That's a big word for me to use. But if you look at the last 3 national champions, Florida State, Ohio State, and Alabama, and then look at the schools that have recruited the best over the last 5 years, it's Florida State, Ohio State, and Alabama. If you look in the rankings right now, One thing early on that I like to look at before the rankings get too set is, like we said, the average ranking per recruit right now. Number 1, Ohio State. Let me look down here. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, Florida State. So let me ask you a question. I have said this. This is like my off-season shtick. I may have to include Florida State in this, but I'm not going to for now. To me, it's an Ohio State-Alabama world. If I were picking the national champion for this coming season and you gave me Ohio State and Alabama, I would give you the field. Has it gotten to the point where it's going to be Ohio State, Florida State, I guess, or Alabama now every season based on the way they're recruiting?
Well, to include Florida State in that, they have to hit on their quarterback, where the other two programs, there's just so much NFL talent, and so Ohio State and Alabama right now, the way Alabama recruits, it's not they're getting everybody based on their production, and I'm not saying they're not working it on the trail, because they're certainly building relationships. They worked hard to build relationships with guys like Ben Davis, who was an Alabama legacy, and they were going to get him if your wife and my wife were recruiting him. But they're working, but they're the best closers right now in college football, because they can wait and survey and just pick, because they've won so many national titles as of late, and they've had so many guys drafted as of late. Ohio State, no one's outworking that staff. So they're the hardest working recruiting staff in the country. And so that's why, and then you add the results, one national championship. Now this NFL draft is going to be huge. Not that they weren't putting guys in the league before, but now it's like these are guys that have been developed by Urban Meyer from start to finish, the Urban Meyer staff. And so this is going to even take their recruiting to another level, I think, which now you're almost splitting hairs, because how much higher can it go? But I really think that Ohio State is putting themselves in a position where they're going to be turning guys away late that are really good, late that want to come in. I think that it's trending that way for us. Right now it's a little easier to recruit at Alabama than Ohio State. You're split hairs between the two. But I think that's about to get even. And then one thing that you can never, the one advantage Alabama is always going to have slightly over Ohio State is just a lot of the guys that Alabama's recruiting can drive there. And sometimes Urban Meyer and his staff, they got to convince a young man that's a plane ride away to pick them over Alabama. And they win those battles sometimes, but that's a hell of a recruiting effort, But yeah, those two schools, I'd take them in the field every year and feel good about it. I like that analogy. I've never heard it, but I'm going to start stealing it and saying it at bars and parties and with people too, because they got the two best coaches and guys that certainly can evaluate.
I tell you what, it sounds like a hyperbolic statement that will make you the top of the bars and even more popular at parties than you already are. But if you look at it, Meyer and Saban have won 7 of the last 10 national titles. So it's really not that outlandish. I just think if I were betting and you gave me a choice, the field, I got Alabama and Ohio State going forward, I'll take Alabama and Ohio State. And I know Ohio State's not ranked as high as Alabama going into next season, but that doesn't bother me at all. In fact, for the first time in a while, there's going to be a team ranked higher by some in the Big Ten. Michigan is ranked higher by many in the preseason polls. As I'm looking at the recruiting rankings among Big Ten schools, Michigan is in the 5 spot. Then you got to drop down to 11 for Iowa, 13 for Northwestern, and so on. Is it fair to say that Michigan's the team in the Big Ten that impresses you the most on the recruiting show right now? I don't think they have a chance to catch Ohio State, but it does look like there's a big gap.
Well, I think there's a gap between the guys Ohio State's recruiting and the guys Michigan's recruiting from top to bottom. So I still think that Ohio State's talented football team, maybe not this year for 1 year, because Ohio State had to lose so many guys, and Michigan's bringing bringing back a lot of guys. But even so, Ohio State's got the best player in the Big Ten in J.T. Barrett. And I still think that he wasn't himself last year, and I expect him to really bounce back if the pieces around him can be productive, particularly, obviously, the offensive line, because they got skill players. They may not all be proven, but they'll figure that out. If the offensive line plays well this year, Ohio State will still be potent on offense. I expect J.T. Barrett to be in the Heisman discussion, and I expect him to play like he did his first year under center. We could speculate many reasons why he didn't have that special year this year, but I expect them to be special again next year. Michigan, they obviously have a great coach that is a great motivator that gets kids to play hard and maximizes his roster, and they're certainly upgrading the talent. I do think Michigan's got a shot to run the table this year, but that doesn't mean that I don't think 4 or 5 schools aren't better than them. They got a good schedule, and that's life. It sets up good for the Wolverines this year. If they get the same kind of quarterback play this year that they got last year, they got a shot. Because I think on defense they really only are missing a pass rushing element coming back, and Rashawn Gary can help provide that, and they'll be very sound defensively outside of that. I wonder if there's a transition with the new defensive coordinator, but they obviously hired a stud. So you assume the defense will be one of the best in the country because of the schedule they play against. And then if they get solid quarterback play again, the offensive line should be better. And so they got a shot to run the table. But by the end of the year, J.T. Barrett and Ohio State should be clicking on all cylinders. I expect it to be a fun year for the staff at Ohio State. I know they're coaching their asses off this spring when you talk to some of the guys behind the scenes, but they're really having fun coaching this young but very talented group.
It is a young and talented group and a very exciting spring so far. We hope it keeps up. Steve, we appreciate you joining us. Have a good one, Bucknutters.
Appreciate it, guys.